Good afternoon, everybody. I have a pleasure to comment on three presentations from three continents of think tanks that have almost the same age. And I'm from young think tanks too. So I can relate to what the presenters have said so far. I'll be using Werner's framework to just show how similar problems that young think tanks face are, regardless where they are coming from, where they are and where they live. My first, when I was thinking about what these presenters are doing, my first thinking was about the challenges. And it appeared clearly that inputs, scarce inputs, are one of the problems that those young think tanks are facing. Those scarce inputs can be pinpointed, and they relate to lack of required skills, mainly those researchers, lack of data, as was underlined, lack of infrastructure. So those are things that young think tanks have to face when they start. But the other problem they have is the fact that output is not always reliable. A lack of quality output is also a problem. And the long-term evidence of issues is also a problem. So those are the three main aspects that were underlined as being challenges for young think tanks. And some of the presenters have offered solutions by saying that you need to invest in data collection, you need to invest in training young researchers and in retaining young researchers. You also need to invest in quality control. You need also to put emphasis on long-term agenda. The problem is, if you need to do all that, you need money. And you are young. Where do you get that money? Some people would say, just go to the market. If you have good ideas, you can find the money for that. The problem is the market is not always, does not function always the way we think it functions. You have a market that are imperfect. So if you are not on the same playing field, if you go to compete, you may not win in that competition because you have no established reputation. You have no experience, although some people have said that these are young think tanks, but the people who are in those think tanks are not that young. So maybe the think tank can rely on those who have experience, but the think tank itself is young, so it cannot provide some of the experience that is needed and that most of the funders will ask for. The other thing is that we are dealing with public goods. So those imperfections in the market call for other intervention which are different from just going and competing in the market. So if there is no intervention, then what we will see that you are in a vicious cycle. You are young, you cannot prove that you can do things right, so you don't get money. You don't get money, you cannot solve the problems you were dealing with, meaning you cannot get good researchers or experienced researchers, you cannot retain them, and I can tell you that being in a young think tank, I know it's very hard to retain the best researchers because those researchers are also needed by institutions like the World Bank, like regional institutions that compete for the best researchers. So if you are a young think tank, you need money to retain those. If you rely on short-term money, like commissioned money, or on projects, those projects will end. And if the projects end, what will you do to retain those people who were hired to do that work? Even if those are good, the time you need to get other projects, they will go away. So therefore, you need core funding to just break that vicious cycle. So that's one thing that appeared in those presentations. One of the presenters presented opportunities are being the opportunities of building capacity. I just want to share another view of opportunities. What are the opportunities for going for building capacity? And looking around, the first opportunity, of course, that we have is related to the core grant core funding I was referring to. The other opportunity that young think tanks have is what we have today here, exchange with other think tanks. And I think that the fact that young think tanks can relate to more experienced one, can learn from successes but also failures of other think tanks is an asset that we all can rely on. The other thing we can look as an opportunity is the fact that funding agencies, some of them, are willing to support innovative research and innovative research institutions. So even though you are young, even if you are young, if you can demonstrate that you can be innovative, you can go beyond these traditional ways of thinking, then you might get support from some donor funding agencies. The last point I want to raise in terms of opportunities is the digital revolution. The fact that about 15 or 20 years ago, we were in another context with more difficulties in getting data, communicating. Now, there are so many opportunities that we can tap on, and I think we all have to exploit those opportunities. Finally, can we learn more from the young think tanks? Listening to these three think tanks, I think we need to learn more on how do they do to face the problem of retaining good researchers. How do they do to get stable funding, especially beside the IDRC funding? How do they do to get stable funding? How do they do to solve infrastructure problems? How do they do to attract good researchers? How do they recruit? How do they retain? How do they solve the turnover problem? I think we need to hear more from you. You need to hear more from CSE about this. What kind of lesson can be drawn from the experience that we have? I know two of the think tanks have just 4 years of existence. The other one is older. So maybe we can learn from the lessons of that think tank. And please tell us what has worked and what has not worked. What are the failures that you have faced? So reading your presentations, listening to you, I have these questions that are remaining to be answered. Thank you very much.